Hey everyone, welcome back to Everyday Reddit Stories. Today's story is inspired by a post from the NoSleep subreddit. It's about a secret Santa gift that slowly turns into something much darker. I hope you enjoy the story. My mother never let us believe in Santa. As long as I have known her, she has been the strict religious type. Not in the shove it down your throat kind of way, just a big fan of rules. The only thing she wanted me to believe was the truth. Even pastors deserved scrutiny. I remember, on one occasion after a sermon, she confronted our pastor on his anti-evolutionist stance. Between tea sips and stuffing her face with shortbread, she criticized him in front of the eavesdropping congregation. She started quoting some Platinga guy and listed off a bunch of science stuff I didn't understand at that age. It wasn't long before his mouth was stuffed with biscuits too. Any excuse to avoid speaking to my mother. Since she didn't want us worshipping false idols, so Santa was a no-go in our house. Last I checked, I was never praying to Santa. Though I suppose I can't fault her for sticking to her principles. Dad was always bummed out about it. Every year my grandparents would ask me what I asked Santa for. Then he'd remind them with a solemn look Santa wouldn't be visiting. However, avoiding talking to my mother was a sentiment he shared with the pastor. So, no Santa it was, but little me knew he was real. Each year, he'd leave me gifts at the foot of my door. I often wondered if Santa was blind, or if his elves were overworked due to the crude wrapping. Some years they weren't even in bags or paper. They'd just be tied with a cheap bow, nothing else. They always had a funny smell as well. Not bad, just funny. It reminded me of when my dad didn't shower for a week one summer due to a water shortage. Like in that state of almost putrid, but not quite yet. The first present I got was when I was 4. I had begged my parents all year for a Claudine Monster High doll. In an attempt to avoid a crying toddler on Christmas Day, they made it crystal clear that they just couldn't afford one. We got our dog Misty the year before, and that damn terrier could eat for 5 families. That appetite of hers was eating into our funds as much as her dog bowl. My parents did promise they'd try to find the next best thing though. I loved Misty too much to hold it against her. All her antics were far more entertaining than a doll. The bizarre little rescue used to work for the police. Not the typical breed they'd use, but she had a great sniffer. In typical Misty fashion, however, her stomach led her more than her nose, and she ate more evidence than she provided. So, her handler sadly had to give her up. Ever the greedy mutt, she somehow figured out how to open doors. Anytime I found her inside the cupboards, she'd just be sniffing around. But all the missing food around the house was evidence of her crimes. Before she was a year old, we started discovering large parts of our groceries had vanished without a trace. Once we realized who the culprit was, we started panicking since the plastic wrapping was gone too. The vet found no plastic contents in her stomach, so Misty must have buried the packaging elsewhere. We started locking the cabinets. I didn't kick up a fuss about my Christmas dreams being spoiled, but it was a letdown. All the kids in my neighborhood would delight in telling me the lists they'd give Santa. I'd always make sure to remind them Santa wasn't real. To my annoyance, they had the power of the majority to decide I was wrong. Every year, they got whatever was on their Santa lists. I remember thinking it'd be great if this Santa guy could replace my parents, just for Christmas, of course. Then I'd get all the toys I wanted. To my surprise, on Christmas morning, a cardboard box laid at my feet. If I had been moving faster, I would have kicked it down the hallway. Fortunately, I spotted it due to its bold red writing that read, "From Santa." I was confused. Santa wasn't real. Was Dad playing a practical joke on me? I had woken up before my parents, so I took the opportunity to uncover the mystery alone in my room. I shook the box to guess what was inside. Just a little though. I feared it'd be fragile. I didn't know why, but I was nervous. I really wanted to know if this Santa guy was worth the hype. Or if maybe this was some strange test from Mother to see if I'd been listening to her. The big red guy certainly didn't seem to deserve the praise from the sight of the box. Other than the writing, there was just a pathetic bow tied with string. I didn't need scissors to open it up either. It was so poorly taped the sides weren't even stuck together. Instead, the sticky plastic shot up to the ceiling. The box itself was torn up, as if someone had opened it just to seal it again. I was still careful ripping it open. My parents' room was right next door, and I didn't want them to hear. What I found inside was nothing short of a miracle. It was the exact doll I had begged my parents for. She was a bit rough around the edges. Her hair was in knots. One in particular was molded together with some sticky substance I couldn't identify. Her clothes were clearly from another doll. They barely fit and didn't match her color palette. The paint adorning her lip was scratched off and her joints were stiff. But it was her. I was ecstatic. I could fix all her quirks, no bother. A repaint, some conditioner, then boom, perfect. Though my joy was followed promptly by confusion. Mom had always said Santa wasn't real. Maybe it was from my parents. Why wasn't it downstairs with the rest of my presents then? It couldn't have been Misty, that's for sure. I decided to keep the discovery a secret until I figured out for myself what was going on. After all, if this Santa guy was real, I just hit a gold mine. I didn't want Mom chasing him off. When my parents woke up, they made no mention of any nighttime visitors. We just went to the living room as per routine, and one by one unwrapped our presents. My parents didn't get me a Monster High doll. They did get me a Barbie, however, with accessories and a doggy companion that looked just like little Misty. I got so distracted playing with the new doll, I forgot about the surprise one upstairs. If a toy was new and shiny enough, that's what I usually tend to do. I was a bit of an airhead as a kid. When I went back up to my room, I saw my peculiar gift poking out from under my bed, an immediate reminder. Oh, right. So it wasn't my parents. This Santa guy must be real after all. He's way better than this Jesus guy anyway. He actually gives me stuff. I didn't want to eat my words when I saw the other kids, but it was undeniable now. I couldn't help but wonder if he was as jolly as they said. Was his beard really as white as snow? Wait, or was that Rudolph? No, his gimmick was the nose. Damn it, getting distracted again. Whatever the answer, I couldn't ask my parents. The no Santa tradition continued in full force. If I mentioned I knew the truth, I'd have to listen to Mom repeat otherwise. She may even take Claudine away. This was undeniable proof though. She always did harp on about evidence and stuff. On the other hand, she's also stubborn. No, I was not risking my Claudine's life on a risky bet. Under my bed, out of my parents' sight, she shall remain. I continued to receive packages from Santa. With every year, the gifts got a bit stranger. They also got further and further away from what I had asked for. One year, I asked for a Lego set. Instead, I got Jenga blocks that had been carved into a crude imitation. Another year, I asked for a lava lamp. This time, I got a regular lamp with no light bulb. This pattern of odd gifts continued. I asked for new shoes, I got slippers. I asked for a zoo playset, I got an old mouse catnip toy. Hot Wheels cars? Nope, an old wooden train set. I wanted Jesus back. This Santa guy was incompetent. Not only were all these toys not what I asked for, but they were useless. By this age, all my classmates were starting to deny Santa's existence. I must have had my mother's strong spirit, as I kept believing long past the other kids. But by the time I was getting a stick of gum instead of sweets, which were in a shoe instead of a stocking, I began to have doubts. Maybe they all just stopped believing because Santa was just the worst. Even if the gifts appeared every year, there's no way I'd keep believing in this guy. It was then I considered something. What if it was someone else? It hit me. Dad. He was always so disappointed with the lack of Santa in my life. Maybe he'd been leaving these gifts all along. If he had a small budget and needed to hide them from Mom, he'd have to get second-hand nonsense. It made perfect sense. On Boxing Day, I ran down the stairs to find my dad in the kitchen. Humming a tune, he scrubbed down the sink with bleach and soda crystals. A nose-pinching smell had been developing in the pipes. Certain areas of the house had become clouds of death at night from just how strong it had become. We figured it was an old house. They tend to come with equally ancient smells. We had a plumber out a few times. He flushed them out, which helped for a while. But a few months would pass, and it'd come back even stronger. Dad, to combat it, began weekly scrub-a-thons. He'd go sink to sink, toilet to toilet, cleaning them till his hands ached. It seemed to work. Much better than hearing Misty whines anyway. That nose of hers made her more alert to it than us. The older Misty grew, the more anything seemed to bother her. At night, she'd whine a lot, even after the smell had gone. The sensory horrors of our house aside, I focused on how to test my father. Mom was in the room next door, so I had to be careful with my words. Before I could utter a sentence, Dad was scrambling in a panic to stop Misty from eating the fridge's contents. I found myself rooting for her over my own flesh and blood. But alas, she was a tiny girl, and Dad could pick her up with one hand. My girl was never winning this battle. "Oh, Misty, why are you like this?" my dad grumbled to himself. It was then he spotted me. "Emily, I didn't see you there, pet. Did you need something?" I got so distracted by all the commotion, I had forgotten my original objective again. "Dad, can you get me a light bulb?" "A light bulb?" "Yeah, I need one." I winked at him, but he just stared back with a blank expression. After a moment, he laughed. "Sure, kid, I'll get you a candle too." I never received a bulb nor a candle. Looking back at it, this was a clear attempt at one of his poor jokes. But to a 9-year-old me, this was all the proof I needed. He never asked why I asked for one, so he must have known it was for the lamp. Simple. I wish he could have got it without me prompting him to. But this works. Back to my toys I went, and soon I forgot about the light bulb. There was another reason to worry. I was running out of room under my bed. I needed somewhere to store my toys before they were found. Maybe the attic? But I'm too short to reach the door. It wasn't even really a door, just a block of wood we slid to the side. There was no lock, so that'd make it easier, but no way I could lift it and sneak a ladder over. We kept our Christmas decorations up there, and not much else, so it would be a good hiding spot. No, I decided against it. The smell up there was rotten anyway, since Dad never went up there. Misty hated the attic too. When we first got her, she'd bark at it a lot. The barking ceased, unless it was open, making it a definite no-go zone for hiding. I didn't need all my gifts, however. If the next gift was too big, I'd chuck a couple out. Then the next year came. I asked for a porcelain doll. No, I wasn't born in the 60s, but it was a new trend at school. By trend, I mean Amy Lee got one, and now everyone wanted one. My parents were blunt. They didn't trust me with something that fragile and expensive. I insisted they could get a cheap one, but they refused. Bah humbug. They had me choose something else from my list. I had faith in my father to pull through, however. Or should I say Santa? There'd be plenty of old broken dolls at charity shops or sold secondhand online. I was sure he would manage. I didn't get anything close to porcelain. The cardboard box was way too big for the size of its contents. It wasn't even taped together this time, instead falling apart at the sides. It smelt even worse than all the other ones too. Inside was a rag doll. An old rag doll with matted blonde hair that looked a lot like mine. It had no clothes and was poorly stitched together, its stuffing still seeping out of the cracks. It was not cute or cuddly. It was just a mess. I tried my best to ignore the stains splotted over it. Its face was scratched off and painted over. It looked as if it was done in anger with how frantic the paint strokes appeared. The weirdest detail stapled to its forehead. In place of its face was a Polaroid photo. A Polaroid photo of me. I did not remember the photo being taken. I didn't seem to be aware of a camera in the picture either. I was tucked away in a bright white rectangle in the corner of a pitch-black image. I was looking up at something as I saw hands emerge from the same location I stood. My mum's hands, reaching for Christmas decorations. The attic? I threw the photo away and gave the doll to Misty. When my parents asked where she got it, I said she must have dug it up. There's no way my dad would give me something so strange. I too realized he never got a light bulb. I considered this being a cruel lesson from my mother, an elaborate ruse to show why I shouldn't believe fairy tales so easily. But she didn't take the photo. I doubt Dad did either. The Polaroid was recent too. I could tell it was from the start of the month when we began decorating, so I wouldn't have forgotten it being taken. My parents seemed a bit out of it Christmas morning, like they did not sleep. There was a possibility they really had been sneaking around, and this was a poor DIY gift. What confirmed it wasn't either parent was when I unwrapped their present to find a porcelain doll. I should have sent something, but fear crippled me. I wanted to believe the lie that it was really Santa, or some mythical creature that doesn't understand what a good gift is. It wasn't a violating image, yet I felt gross. From then on, I felt like someone was watching me. These constant, omnipresent eyes I couldn't escape from. That's when I remembered. Misty was beside me in bed that night. Misty would bark at visitors, postmen, and even her own shadow. While her whining had stopped in the past year, her constant yapping never ceased. The only people that didn't get to hear her vocal nature was when it just was us. That sniffer was too accustomed to us. If someone had truly been outside my door, she would have barked up a storm. I never sent any letters to anyone either. How could someone know what I wanted? No one was there for our conversations, so this figure could somehow read minds. That brought me some relief. It wasn't a person, not likely to be a monster either. Monsters wouldn't leave gifts. Could it have really been Santa? It felt a strange conclusion, but one a scared 10-year-old was willing to accept. What if he was real after all? A guy like that would probably have magic to take a photo without me knowing. I'm sure he'd be an expert dog tamer too. I think deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. But I didn't want to ask my parents anything about it. Not just because they'd take all my other stuff away, but because I feared their answer, at least subconsciously. I decided what I should do. What Mother always talked about. Evidence. I set out to catch the mystery gifter in the act. Whether it be a magical old man or one of my parents, I was going to find out for myself. Then I'd report whatever answer I got onto Mum. She'd know what to do from there. Misty was getting older before she was getting younger. The less energy she had, the more I felt bad for her. I wanted to get her a friend, but I think we all knew a younger dog would drive her mad. So, I asked for a stuffed dog plushie, the best plan an 11-year-old can muster. Though I knew Santa would be able to get me one. Stuffed dogs were a popular form of teddy. Santa could find one anywhere. My parents already agreed, but an extra didn't hurt, especially if I guaranteed Santa showed up. I had to hype myself up to be a big girl. Keeping my door open all night in the dark sent my imagination racing. I'd always imagined some monster creeping up the stairs to take me in my sleep. My circumstances made that image more vivid than usual. It had to be done. I knew that. If I just roughed it out, I'd manage. I didn't need to sleep anyway, quite the opposite. I needed to remain awake all night long, and my buzzing mind could help with that. I waited. I waited and waited. My eyes bounced around each dark corner of the hallway. I didn't know where he was going to come from. I just had to wait. Be patient. I wished I brought Misty to bed with me. I couldn't risk her scaring him off, though. This was my one shot. If I saw him, he may never come back again. Or maybe he would. Who knows? I didn't get the rules. It was a risk not worth taking either way. A couple times, I was tempted to shout into my parents to get me a glass of water. I wasn't thirsty, just terrified. I thought sending them downstairs would mean they could scout it out on my behalf. But when they go down those stairs, they could bump into Santa and make him run away. I had to commit. I had to know. The visibility was poor, but I could make out that 3 hours had ticked away on the clock. My eyes were so heavy. Not even fear could remove the thick blanket of exhaustion that was washing over me. Just a few more hours, Emily. Just a few more hours, and you will catch him. I don't think I understood what a few meant. What I did know was I had to stay awake. But I couldn't. I didn't realize it had happened. I just drifted off, peacefully. I think I dreamt about Misty, her little tail wagging as I returned home from school. I didn't want it to end. That was until I heard a creak. It was a struggle peeling open my eyes. My eyelids fought hard to shut again, but my mind vaguely recalled the mission I had set forth. I peeked from under my covers towards the doorway. It was so dark, even focusing my eyes didn't help to reveal the source of the sound. Then I saw him. Or well, the silhouette of him. I could see a flimsy hat on his head, with a plump pom-pom at the end. He wore big boots, seeming to be made out of leather with how they squeaked. I think I could also make out the outline of a beard, but no other details on his face. It was him. It was really Santa. I laid my head back down, too tired to entirely comprehend who stood at my door. I couldn't help but smile to myself, however, knowing something magical had happened. "Quiet," I murmured. "Thank you, Santa." I could see him put a finger to his mouth, shushing me, before turning away. My eyes began to crust back together again as I watched him tiptoe away. The last thought I remember having was guilt. We really should have left milk and cookies for him. When I awoke again, it was Christmas morning. It took me a minute to fully escape my slumber, but it hit me hard when I remembered what had happened. I practically jumped out of bed. I was so excited I couldn't wait to tell everyone. Santa was real. He was real. I had no proof other than the gifts for now, but I'd get more next year. But I knew he was real. Without a second thought, I brought the cardboard box inside and slammed it onto my bed. Again, poorly taped and no paper, but I didn't care. Paper? I didn't care. This one was a big one, at least weight-wise. Santa must have got Misty a bint friend. I couldn't wait to surprise her. It may not be a real dog, but she could have a pretend pack like the wolves on TV. I tore it open without considering how to. I just knew it all needed to go so I could look inside. Paper landed all over the floor, but I could pick it up later. Right now, I was confused. I didn't understand. Inside, there was a dog plush, just like I asked for. Yet, there was something off about it. For a toy, it was hyper-realistic, uncannily so. Like if I touched it, I'd feel its stomach move. The red stuffing was the main giveaway. It wasn't real. But the oddest thing of all was, it looked just like Misty. I reached a hand in, stroking its fur. It felt like Misty. A bit of a wet dog smell, too. It smelt like Misty. There was even a little warmth of it, but like it was fading out. That wasn't like Misty. When I removed my hand, I realized the stuffing wasn't naturally that color. I ran out into the hallway and began whistling. "Misty!" I yelled out. Nothing. Not even the sound of movement. "Misty, here, girl!" My desperate plea echoed. Still nothing. "Misty!" This time it was a screech, reality hitting me like a truck. My mum burst out of my parents' room, disoriented by being woken so suddenly. I ignored her as I rushed back to my room. "Emily, what's the matter?" she inquired, somewhat expostulated. Shaking, I approached her, my increasingly colder Christmas gift laid across my arms. The coming tears overwhelmed me. I could only quiver out a meek response. "Misty." I didn't know how, but my mother immediately grasped the situation. "Eric, we need to go, now." It all happened so fast I didn't know how to process it. All I knew was we abandoned our home and all our presents to run to our neighbor's house. My mum demanded a phone to call the police. The neighbors didn't argue, because despite all the chaos, I never set Misty down. My tears soaked her empty husk. My girl, it was all my fault. It wasn't until after my parents spoke to the police I pieced everything together. My parents had already had their suspicions before Misty's fate. They had grown uneasy about the persistent smell, but that wasn't all. At night, Mum could swear she heard faint murmurs in the attic. It tended to creak and moan a lot, but in recent years, it sounded like more than just an old house. It's where she told the police to look first. Outside of the powerful odor, they did not find anything at first. That was until they discovered a hidden crawl space at the back. Behind old broken TVs, that had been tossed up there before I was even born, was a latch. One they'd forgotten all about. When the police opened it, they found a living space. Blankets, wrappers, missing food now rotten. There were stains everywhere from the rotten juices of previous meals. And trash. So much trash. Whoever lived there must have rummaged about a lot. There were piles of old useless items that had long been tossed. They had a dedicated corner with flattened cardboard boxes and tape. The smell in the pipes wasn't the pipes themselves. The crawl space was mainly for insulation. So much of the rotten junk seeped down into the walls. The gap between these walls was even big enough for someone to slide inside. Beside a blanket and a pillow was a beaten-up plastic folder. It contained photos. Hundreds of photos. They must have chosen to pay for the Polaroid paper over food, stealing our own to get by. All for one purpose. Me. They were all photos of me, from the attic, from cracks in the walls, from the kitchen when we were all outside. Some outside my bedroom door. They dated back to when I was a toddler. Playing with Mum in the garden, us all eating dinner, so many of me sleeping at night, even when I was in the bath. The photographer peered through the gaps in the ventilation. In the same section was a pair of my socks, some of my baby teeth, and old nappies. They found everything, except the man himself. The only remains of him was the Santa suit he had worn. His stench clung with it. My guess is he abandoned it in a panic when he heard his present didn't go down well. I felt so stupid. I knew something was up a year earlier. Even before then, I should have caught on. The police shared the same sentiment. I'm not sure they believed anything I told them. Just some kid over-exaggerating events to pretend I knew more than I did. My mother said the real stupidity began when I started blaming myself. How could a child predict this? She'd always repeat to me, The sentiment rang hollow when burying my best friend. A lot of time has passed since then. Sometimes, it feels like I'm still being watched. It makes my skin crawl just thinking about how that man is still out there, waiting. What follows me most is guilt. I got Misty killed, all so I could play detective. I know I was young, but it brings me no comfort. Thanks to me, she'd never see justice. Despite warning us the whole time, she met such a cruel fate. To Misty, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, my good girl. You deserved better. So much better. I wish I could make it up to you. For now, I hope my tears can reach the dead.